Today, we're jumping into a story that starts on the streets of Morocco, but trust me, it ends up asking a question that affects all of us. What is our real relationship with dogs in the modern world? It's a story about public safety, it's about compassion, and it's about some pretty uncomfortable data. All right, let's get into it.
First, I just want you to look at this number, 3 million. Just let that sink in for a second. What do you think that could possibly represent? That's it. 3 million is the potential number of stray dogs that could be killed in Morocco as the country gears up to host the World Cup. It's a shocking number, and it's the spark that ignites a huge debate and our entry point into this whole complex issue. Okay, so let's start right there in Morocco, where the country is facing a massive, massive dilemma over its stray dog population. So how on earth did things get so out of hand? Well, it all starts with a pretty simple and sad root cause: people abandoning their pets. From there, it just spirals. You get public nuisance issues like noise and, of course, the risk of bites. And then there's the very serious public health threat of rabies. But the trigger, the thing that's forcing the issue right now, is the immense pressure to make the cities look, quote, presentable for the World Cup. So this situation creates two totally opposite proposed solutions. On one side, you have mass culling. It's a fast, brutal approach that's all about getting the numbers down and quickly. But critics say it's not just cruel, it's actually ineffective. It creates a vacuum that new dogs just move in and fill. Then, on the other side, you have the TNVR program: trap, neuter, vaccinate, and release. This is the humane, long-term strategy that animal welfare groups swear by, saying it's the only way to actually control the population for good. But here's the thing. Morocco's problem is mostly about the sheer number of dogs, and that's only half the story. Now we're going to pivot, because a really important European study forces us to look at this problem in a completely different way. And this is the question that ties it all together. Morocco is struggling with the quantity of dogs, but this European data, it makes us zoom in and look at the quality, the very nature of the risk, and frankly, the findings are pretty sobering. And this quote right here, this is the core idea of the entire study. What the researchers are saying is that when we focus only on the very rare cases where a dog attack is fatal, we are completely missing the huge hidden part of the iceberg, the thousands upon thousands of severe, life-changing injuries that happen way more often. And listen, the study does not mince words. It uses incredibly graphic language like a torn-off face, and even notes that decapitation has been reported, to make you confront the brutal reality of what these severe attacks look like, especially when they involve children. This isn't about scaring people. It's about being brutally honest about the stakes. So what exactly do they mean by a severe attack? Well, they define it with chilling detail. It's not a single bite. It's repeated, targeted biting and shaking, usually aimed at the neck or the head, and it continues until the victim is completely incapacitated. It's a predatory behavior that's almost impossible to stop once it starts. And this, of course, brings us to the part of the study that stirs up the most debate, the age-old question of nature versus nurture when it comes to dog aggression. Okay, so here's where things get really controversial. The researchers basically conclude that, yeah, upbringing matters a lot, but you absolutely cannot ignore genetics and heredity as factors in what they call abnormal aggression. This goes right against that popular idea that it's all in how you raise them. Now, based on the data they reviewed, the study identifies specific groups of dogs that are overrepresented in these fatal attack statistics. You can see the list here: bull-type terriers, mastiff-type dogs, some Nordic breeds, and German shepherds. The researchers are really clear that this isn't about blaming any one dog, but about analyzing data patterns to understand the risk better. And that leads to a really powerful point about accountability. The study argues that because we can't trace a dog back to its breeder after an attack, we have a huge blind spot. It's impossible to see if there are patterns coming from certain breeding lines, and they call this a direct risk to public health. The study also takes a direct shot at how some of these dogs are marketed. It flat out recommends banning the term nanny dog, saying there's absolutely no scientific evidence to back it up. It also points out how official breed standards sometimes describe dogs with fighting origins as being excellent with children, and they label this as dangerously misleading information. So, where does all this leave us? We've got a massive population crisis on one side and a deep dive into risk on the other. This final section is all about connecting the dots to find solutions that might actually work.
The most important thing to realize is that there's no single magic bullet here. A real solution has to work on two levels at the same time. The big picture, macro level of population control, like what they're trying in Morocco, and the small scale, micro level of individual owner responsibility, which is what the European study highlights.
And to their credit, Morocco is taking major action. They've launched a 1 billion dirham national program. That's a huge investment. It's being managed by municipal offices that handle everything. And get this, each animal is tracked with a digital app called GoNR to create accountability. On top of all that, they're creating new laws to punish abandonment, trying to stop the problem at its source.
But it's not all about big government programs. You've also got amazing local groups taking action. This slide is basically their 5-step playbook. It starts with getting official by creating a legal association. That lets them get funding. Once they have land, they can start the humane TNVT program: trap, neuter, vaccinate, and tag. And then the final crucial step, community education, to try and change minds for the future. Now, let's put those big picture actions right next to the very specific policy ideas from the European study. They suggest things like mandatory traceability for every single dog, requiring dogs from high-risk breeds to be muzzled in public, and making sure they're never left with inexperienced caregivers. See? It's all about individual responsibility. And this right here is the main takeaway. Real, lasting progress is only going to happen if we combined these two things: large-scale government management of animal populations and clear laws that put responsibility right where it belongs, on breeders and owners. You can't just pick one. You need both. So, I'll leave you with this final question to think about. This isn't about being pro-dog or anti-dog. It's about being pro-reality. When you look at all the evidence, how do we find that perfect balance between managing the whole population and demanding individual responsibility so that we can build a future where humans and dogs can both live safely together?